couple of side topics to discuss, but I doubt it'll take too long.
I don't have the agenda right in front of me. And I recall there were two items, one to go the applications, and there was one other thing.
The other was what to do with the remaining budgets from the previous years.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And
I
then
want
Dave,
oh, go ahead.
and Dave brought up something to me that he wanted to ask, and it about let me just look at it. Oh, about travel scholarships guidelines.
Okay. I will mention a very quick point that can probably be better dealt with at our next meeting, which is figuring out the liaison people for the grant recipients. But that's really a secondary thing after we have some grant recipients. So
Yeah. Hello, Dave. How's it going?
I'm great.
Dave.
Hello.
I think we're just missing Amanda.
Mhm. Are you in the States, Dave?
I am. I'm back in American soil.
Hello, all. Good afternoon.
Hey, Amanda.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi. How's everyone? Happy February.
Yeah. Happy day before Groundhog Day.
Oh, right. Yes, thank you. Well, the sun is out. Good. Welcome back, Dave. Hope you had a
I'm going
good
to
trip.
quickly ask. I'm going to ask my kids to get off the internet to make sure I can last. So I'll be right back.
Okay.
Adrian, do you want to take the reins on the discussion today? I know you and I didn't connect beforehand. How would you like to proceed? And I know we've got sort of a review of the grant submissions, and then kind of how we move forward with the past fiscal year grants.
Yeah.
Would you like to be our facilitator today?
Sure.
Great. Thank you.
I'll wait till Damon's back. Oh, there, he's back.
Yeah,
Okay.
streaming video and Zoom meetings don't work well.
Yeah, your sound is a little bit wonky, but we should succeed.
I'll speak slowly.
We will begin. I don't have the agenda in front of me, but if indeed the first item is to review the grant applications, let's start there. And then we have a second item, which is to figure out what to do with outstanding funding. And I think Dave and I maybe have small slivers of items. I shouldn't speak for Dave, but Damon mentioned he had one thing to include in this meeting too. So we have only 2 applications for grants proper, as you know, and we have one that traditionally we've ended up calling a sponsorship. And I guess we'll talk about that afterward. So should we begin with the grant application from Henry Pollard, which is a request for $500 and I will, if it helps, I will give my sense of what this project is about, and then we can all weigh in. Henry is I take it he's a student at St. Anne's Belfield, and I only take that from his email address. So I don't know his age. I don't know anything else. And it dawns on me that maybe our applications in the future should have a very brief paragraph about who you are, anything you want to share with the grant committee. Because in the case of the other grant application as well, we're really ignorant about who this person is, especially coming from one of our sister cities. So Henry's project appears to have a great motivation to connect teenagers who might be feeling disrupted or, off base due to the pandemic, 2+ years of this pandemic. And he wants to focus on Poggio a Caiano in Italy and create an Instagram account and a website with the purpose of allowing interested teens to show up to 3 photographs a piece, post up to 3 photographs a piece, and connect in that way. That sounds skeletal, and I think it's because the grant application is very skeletal, in my view. Shall I hear your comments before sharing my thinking? Should we share comments?
Either way.
And I would just remind everyone, you all may know this already, but these conversations are being broadcast live. So I know in the past when we did grants reviews, they were done confidentially. The results were reported publicly, but these discussions were confidential. But now in the age of transparency, we are live for public consumption. So.
Thanks, Dave, for that reminder.
I don't mind going first if you'd like. Hopefully you can hear me decently. My feeling was that while it might not be a really, precisely written long proposal, that I thought it was fundamentally a sound one. I think it's coming from a person who seems to legitimately want to engage with another sister city. And I actually thought I remember reading at one point of his proposal where he mentions sister cities in plural. I do know that he mentioned Poggio primarily, but I don't know if he wants to go beyond Poggio. But either way, I thought his funding request was pretty modest, and for $500 it seemed to me something that that would benefit the sister city relationship, and that it made sense to fund. That was my take on it.
Amanda or Dave?
Go ahead, Amanda.
Thanks. Sorry, my dog is lapping up water in the background. So yeah, I think I really agree, Damon, with those points. I think my recommendation, because some of the details of how this would be operationalized and delivered are kind of missing from the application, I think we have in the past, when we had questions, gone back to applicants and asked for more detail. I would like to understand a little better how this would be organized, how connections would be made with the sister city or cities to identify teenagers in another community, and how that process would go. I think the biggest question I had was why Poggio, and just a little more detail on why the student selected Poggio, what's the interest there. Again, I think it also gets back to understanding a little more about the applicant too, and how this could be used locally for the school community and the Charlottesville community. So I think just a lot of questions, but generally like the spirit and the idea behind this.
I agree. I really like the spirit of this proposal. I think anytime our sister city efforts can engage young people and connecting with other young people around the world, I think that's a win. I love the idea of utilizing social media, Instagram, to help make those connections. It's a fairly low cost tool. I'm fully supportive of it. I have shared some of the same, just sort of logistical questions about how he envisions making some of those connections. But I would love to see if Poggio goes well. I'd love to, maybe reserve some funding. It doesn't sound like it requires a lot of funding, but maybe reserve some funding to do it for Winneba and Weiwei and Besançon. So anyhow, yeah, I'm supportive.
Thank you. All your comments echo my general feeling about the grant. I too really would like a lot more detail in terms of who he would be contacting to get this off the ground, and how it would be promoted, how teens would even be encouraged to offer up photographs. So information sort of about the scaffolding of the project, and then the benefits of this photo collection. I do have quite a few details that I would happily put into a letter communication to Henry to ask him to flesh out this proposal farther. And it would include more detail on the budget. It lists $200 to build an Instagram account, which takes 5 seconds and $0, and $300 for the photo book. So I'd like more detail on that. I should step back. The $200 I think was about the building of the website. So I'd want more information on what will be on the website. What will it look like? How will it serve? I think fundamentally it's a really nice idea with a very good motivation, good intention. And we're all looking for just those nuts and bolts to help us envision it better, and really how might it have some further outcomes besides simply putting photos up to look at. I see this as having all kinds of potential for, maybe a presentation. Maybe the photos are submitted in terms of categories. How did you deal with boredom during the pandemic? How did you what was your best day? What was your worst day in the pandemic? I don't know, I'm just kind of brainstorming, but this could take all kinds of interesting shapes. So I would recommend that we reach out to him. We still have plenty of time. Well, a certain, 2 weeks before our February 15th meeting. If he were to take a few days to think this over and get something back to us with more fleshed out information, I think we'd be able to make a better case when we have our February 15th meeting.
Just another thing that has come to my mind, if he is under 18, I presume we would need a parent to be a signature to the grant proposal.
Okay.
He is a minor. I don't know. What do you all think? I would think if we were signing agreements that you would need somebody over 18 to sign an agreement. Just, something to consider as we move forward. And maybe the city attorney or somebody should weigh in on that, but I would think that the city would want an adult to, sign off on the grant and disbursement of funds.
I'm pretty sure the application actually allows for that, but I could be mistaken. maybe I'm thinking of something else. Does that,
I think we've talked about the subject before. And I thought that we had included somewhere that a parent would need to sign, but maybe I'm not remembering correctly.
well, I can check the application again and I can, who would I check with? Would Max know that offhand? Or,
I just pulled up the application. I can, under eligibility, it says applicants under the age of 18 should have a parent or legal guardian sign the application form. So that's not, yeah, so that is a point we would need to follow up on.
yeah. Okay. I just saw his signature on the bottom, so that we'll find out. We'll find out his age.
He's 18, but maybe not.
Right. We know this name, right? Didn't Henry apply for one of the roles as a youth representative?
Not this round.
Okay, yeah, not this round, but I know this name has come up, or maybe he has contacted the Sister City Commission for some information in the past. It's ringing a bell.
Yeah, actually sounded pretty familiar to me too, Adrian. I believe he was a previous applicant without looking, but yeah, I believe he was.
Okay.
Checking now. So.
Okay. Well, we can, if we feel the next steps are, we've figured out the next steps is to contact him, get more information, and then we can share that among ourselves before the 15th and have it ready to when we speak to the larger meeting. The next application from Ama Aful, and it's titled "The Creation of Charlottesville's Sister City (parentheses Winneba) official website." I think my main question after looking at this, I had seen your email, Dave, but it was in the far back of my mind, so I was just looking at it pretty fresh. And then when I looked at your email, I had this, my main question was, wouldn't the city of Winneba already have a site? And if it didn't, wouldn't that be something that is more city supported, city funded, something a lot more official than simply a grant from us?
Or did the city applied for it?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes to the point that I can't remember if it was Amanda or Adrian just raised about the previous applicant. It would be good to have a question on the application form moving forward, just about who they are, and what their connection is, or just something. Because when I saw this name and I saw this application, it didn't ring any bells with me. So I ran it by Nana Garti as the Winneba representative. Didn't ring any bells with him. I ran it by our contacts in the city hall in Winneba. Didn't ring any bells with them. And they said, why are we even looking at building a new website when we already have a website that we've launched? And so anyhow.
I tend to believe, based on that we probably should not, award the grant on this one.
I agree.
Great.
I think if I'm doing this further info from Henry, I wonder if one of you would be willing to look into how this is explained. I guess our next step is to explain it to our other commissioners at our meeting. But I'm finally thinking about the letter that we will send to the applicant.
The letter to this applicant?
Mhm. I'm just wanting to have a little more solid grounding under me as far as our rationale for not considering it.
I mean, I think since Dave, not to volunteer you, but since you have the most knowledge and information on the circumstances, that you would probably be the best person to summarize.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, so the next time we will hear something, Dave, from you will be at our February 15th meeting, and we'll get a general response at that time. And then,
I mean, I'm happy to just email out a draft before then, instead of taking up time in the meeting.
sure,
I don't
Sure.
think the whole commission needs to review, that letter, but,
no, but I mean, it's a sort of a two-step process explaining to the commission
sorry.
what we
Yeah.
received and why we were deciding what we're deciding. And then there's the business of responding to the applicant.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, moving along. I wonder if on the third application, which is technically for a sponsorship, and in my notes about what to do for the next grant cycle, making change, some tweaks to the application, just, having just the applicant describe him or herself. I think at that point, we ought to pull out applications for sponsorships as different from applications for grants. It's probably just a little bit more wording on the website. And then from now on, when you apply for one or the other, but not for a grant project that is truly a sponsorship. And I guess at our meeting on the 15th, we might have to discuss, do we have particular parameters for sponsorships, dollar amounts, types of things we would sponsor versus things we wouldn't. Amanda, would you be willing to perhaps just prepare something on that as a proposal for the 15th, so that we could say, here's what we would call a sponsorship as opposed to.
Sure, I can take a stab at that. I know we had talked about that previously in our goal setting for the grants committee for this year, is to pull out sponsorships and scholarships. And then we'll each need to have specific guidelines. I know we want to also prioritize scholarships, and that's I think time sensitive, probably more time sensitive, but so I do need to follow up on the scholarships guideline too from our previous discussion. And I can try to take on sponsorships, but I don't know how far, hopefully it's fairly simple. I'll try to take a stab at it.
Yeah, even simple is always good.
Yeah, just around some of the core principles and what the process is. I think, to me, it seems like sponsorships could be something that's kind of an open, ongoing kind of process, whereas we have grants, it's sort of an annual process that we go through. But sponsorships can pop up at any time of the year potentially. We would need to think about, how we decide, what are the decision criteria for a sponsorship, and then how much funding do we set aside, and kind of some funding norms around those too.
Great. Do we, given that we're going to do that for the future, but for now we have this request for $1,000. I thought the request for the Virginia Festival of the Book session seemed reasonable. It's the same amount of last year. I had two little kind of small details that caught my eye. One was just a question about the money she's asking for things I don't really quite understand. One of them is called transcript costs for recap pages, and I'm just curious what that is, and so what the money would be covering. And digital media advertising and social media posts are listed for $575. And I sure don't know the ins and outs of digital media advertising. I imagine that does cost money, but the social media post is a question of someone's time and labor as opposed to I guess that should cost something. But anyway, I'm just curious about those costs. And
I'm thinking when we're talking about sponsorships, I mean, we are sponsoring a program or an event. And for me, the need for, the level of detail we need to decide on whether or not we would sponsor an event is different from whether or not we would fund a grant. Because basically,
that's a great point.
We're deciding, do we want to give $1,000 for this event?
And for them to use as they see fit.
I mean, I tend to see a sponsorship in that view, a little different from grants. Not that we don't care what they're doing, but I mean, really, we're sponsoring the event as opposed to funding a specific action.
Right. Yeah, I agree 100% with that. So I pull back not my curiosity about those things, but my need to know.
But
Are
I
we
agree, I support the funding of the sponsorship.
And Dave and Amanda, are you in agreement to fund this?
I'd like just maybe one point around sponsorship is that I think one of the main criteria that we've normally discussed with any of these that as they've arisen is really what is, how does this opportunity help to raise awareness of our sister city relationships, help to increase understanding of the communities and cultures of our sister cities and so forth. And so I think that's kind of a key kind of principle or criterion we look for. And I know with the past Festival of the Book applications, one question has arisen. I think, Dave, you can speak to this more about, is having a Ghanaian author who may or may not have connections to Winneba sufficient. Does that sufficiently kind of raise awareness? Does that help to accomplish some of the goals we've set in terms of raising awareness of sister city relationships? And are there other ways that the event with the writer can do that? So I think that's just one question I wanted to put on the table.
Yeah, thank you, man. I was going to say something very similar because this issue has come up in the past, and we certainly appreciate the Festival of the Book for wanting to highlight Ghanaian authors, but I think our preference should be for authors that either represent or write about, Winneba or that region of Ghana, so that it's sort of shedding light on Winneba, on our sister city, which the last several Ghanaian authors have not, sort of presented that perspective. We have suggested Ghanaian authors to the Festival of the Book that do write from that perspective, and our hope is in the future that we can get an author or authors that really would add value to the sister city connection, and potentially we could do some cross programming, but I don't want to reject the application, because again, I appreciate the gesture, and it sounds like actually a really interesting author and a really interesting book that she'll be reading from. But I agree with Amanda, in an ideal world, it really would be more, have more of a Winneba connection, or at least a connection to that region of Ghana.
In our response to them, if we do choose to fund it, should we put in a request that future funding may or may not happen if there's no connection to the sister city, just to kind of prepare them and maybe give a little push to take a serious look at authors from at least least the region.
I think we could phrase that carefully. So, you know, that we are really focusing, we really want to be focusing in this area, and our funding efforts will privilege, you know, or will, yeah, give preferential treatment to these particular points. And I, you know, make the point that way.
Yeah, I like that.
I agree. I'm supportive of the sponsorship, and I think this has been, I think, an overall good relationship. And if we could work toward I help, you know, kind of working with the festival to identify an author from Winneba or the region for the next cycle, I think that would be great.
Okay. I think that concludes our review of applications. I don't think our grant funding is going to empty out the budget just yet.
You know, we should really at some point have a conversation on what we can do to better attract proposals. I mean, we don't have to cover that today, but I know yeah, go ahead, Amanda.
No, sorry, Damon, please finish your thought.
No, I mean, you got my thought.
Well, I wonder too, if we wanted to at least have a brief kind of reflection on that, and kind of, you know, do we have any reflections on why the application rate was low, you know, lower than it's been in the past years I've been involved, and what's, you know, maybe what some of the contributing factors to that are, and how we might address that in the future. I just wondered if we had any theories or observations. And then I guess a related question I had is, you know, whether we would, given the low rate of application, would we want to consider opening another cycle this year, or would we reprogram that funding for other purposes? And that might be a discussion we need to have with the larger commission when we come together. But I think it would be good if this subcommittee had some view on that.
My sense is that it may be COVID fatigue. It's just, it finally took this long to hit me. So I think I'm one of the lucky ones. But I have just been feeling lately like, you know, just this sense, when is this going to end? And life, will it look anything like it looked before? Because it just feels qualitatively different. And I can't help but think that that may affect a lot of other people in terms of thinking about getting excited about projects, or, you know, future projections. So that's just one person's reflection. I do think that we probably could benefit from a real revamp of our promotion. I'm not sure what that looks like, but our outreach committee limps along in some respects. I don't know that the information always gets to Facebook and our website in an effective way. And I post on Instagram here and there, and, you know, but it just feels like there are probably locations where the idea that there is real funding for your brainchild or your flight of fancy, whatever it might be, that would have a lot more takers if it got out in more, you know, a greater variety of ways, or a louder way, or a something way. I also know we missed, you know, I was going to speak on that little NBC 29 bit, and that didn't happen because of the big Omicron surge. I don't know if that would have made a big difference, but, and my last reflection is that Michael and I made a careful effort at the last city council, or 2 city council meetings ago, to talk about our budgets and our needs. And while it was disappointing to see so few applications, I felt a slight sense of relief, because our thought is that after this cycle, we might be, we might have to put the grants program on suspension for a time, because our balance was really going to take a hit. But that's another discussion to talk about Sister City Commission budgeting and funding, because it's been a confusing mess in my mind. You don't know results until April. We were making this pitch in December. It was the wrong time. So that's another conversation. But I did think that at least we didn't have lots and lots of proposals. On the other hand, had we had lots and lots of proposals and enthusiasm and interest, that we could have made a stronger case for the community has ideas and wants to be engaged in this sister city process. So maybe it's really going to work against us too.
I think what you say about both COVID fatigue, I think COVID fatigue is definitely part of it. I think maybe trying to find another path to people, to organizations, specifically perhaps nonprofit organizations in and around Charlottesville. I don't know if there is a list out there, but Charlottesville is home to so many nonprofits. And maybe if we had a contact for each, even just an email address, that would be a way for us to get in front of individuals as opposed to mass, information. I think a lot of the time when we have information that we just put out there, it's so easy to forget about it or hear it and then let it go. But if we could somehow get a list of citizens or organizations in our community that, actually have people behind the email addresses or, actual addresses, maybe we would get a few more people considering what they might do. People are also not always that engaged. I mean, that's a challenge that, we've all experienced in different ways. But I think the more we can get in front of individuals as opposed to mass communications, probably the better results we'll get.
Have we given any thought, because I'm not on the outreach committee, but have we given any thought to creating an email list for the Sister City Commission just to push out information like this? Basically the kind of people that Damon's talking about, groups or just everyday citizens that want to keep in the loop or stay in the loop on Sister City activities.
Sounds like
I hesitate to mention it because it's going to take work to create it and update it. But sorry, Adrian. But.
Well, I'm just thinking to myself, how is it that we didn't think of that? Because it sounds like a wonderful idea. And you're right. It takes some organizing and monitoring and tending and creating content for that.
Yeah.
And
Sounds like
we have
a Sister City Commission intern.
we do.
It's a good idea. Well, maybe Lasheen can weigh in with the communications department. I know they have email lists that they manage. Is it a heavy lift to add one more? I'd hate to create more work for them because I know they're short-staffed right now, but
are you going to create like a specialized email list? So just these people that want to subscribe to Sister Cities, you have like a list? Yeah, that's no problem. I could talk to IT and get that set up tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
And how would it work? We just provide the messaging, the content to you, or?
Yeah, you'll just send us the message, or if there is well, do you guys have like a staff liaison besides Max? I don't think so. So you'll just give us kind of like how you do with your grants press release. You'll just send us what you want sent out, and we'll just send it to the list of people that subscribe to the Sister City email list.
And we promote that by, we could have something on our websites, you know, say,
Mhm.
do you want to join the email list?
Mm-hmm. And it's super simple. If you go to charlottesville.gov/notify me, it's a long list of different lists you can be subscribed to. So some people are subscribed to just public notice. Some people are subscribed to like the PCRB. Some people are subscribed to multiple. But it's nice when you just don't want every last thing from the city and you're only interested in certain communication from certain departments and organizations. So it kind of keeps things, you know, not so cluttered in people's inboxes when they have the opportunity to subscribe to what list they're actually interested in.
Oh, that could be fantastic. So it would be on, you could get on the list via the city website and via our own sister
Yep.
city website.
Yep, you'll just have that link that notify me, and then there's probably you could do a tiny URL or a bit link that connects directly to that list and just have them sign up there. And that's one way you can start grabbing some people.
But we don't have to, maybe I'll be in touch with you, Lasheen, in on another occasion to find out more detail, but we don't have to manage it.
No, you wouldn't have to manage it at all. You'll just send us the content, and then there's no easy way to pull analytics from our news flashes. That's the only thing. We have to go through like our Google Analytics and see, you know, what web page it landed on, and it only gives us. It's very confusing, but if you did want to know like how many people are, you know, clicking on your news flashes, there's a way. It's just not as simple as like downloading or exporting a PDF. But if you do want that, that's something we can do. It's just not an easy task to do. That's the only thing I don't like about news flashes. If you are interested in that analytics part of it.
Isn't it a case where the email list would be that you or someone behind the scenes just is amassing a long list of email addresses?
Well, with the notify me and the news flashes, the users aren't putting themselves in there. So when we first got the new website, we just moved everyone that was on our old website, that was on our old list. I think we were using, I don't know what service we were using, MailChimp or something. We just moved all of those over to our notify me list. And then as people, you know, hear about the notify me function, they're just adding themselves to the list, and we don't have to add anyone. Unless they request, you know, if they're older, can't really use technology, and they say, I want to be notified of X, Y, and Z, we'll add them manually, but we don't have to do anything. It's all user generated.
Okay. I do and I don't understand, but that's my older brain. But basically someone clicks something on the city website and says, anytime there's news about Sister City stuff, it's going to come into my email box.
Yep.
Just like the city news alerts, which I do see.
Yep.
Because they come into our own email box for Sister Cities. Okay. I'll follow up on that.
Okay, sounds good.
The only other thing I had for today's meeting was to talk about the liaisons, but I think that's really a secondary conversation once we know who's getting these grants. But we did have the discussion we did have to discuss the outstanding funding.
Right. So I know some that we were discussing in our last meeting were related to Winneba and I believe the fire truck and another grant. So I think, Dave, you're going to share with us a little about that.
Yeah, so the fire truck, knock on wood, will finally be heading to the port within a week. We're very excited, and it's taken a few months longer than expected to get the funding, to round up the funding for the shipment. It's not cheap to ship a fire truck over the ocean, but anyhow, and we're hoping to time that because of the delay in shipping the fire engine, the fire department representatives who were planning to present the fire engine and kind of walk their peers in Winneba through the maintenance and upkeep of and operation of the fire engine, they held off on going to Winneba. But they are hoping to come with us on our upcoming trip to the delegation to Winneba. So the timing would work out quite well. It takes a couple of months to ship something like that overseas. So by the time the delegation is in Winneba in late April, early May, the fire truck should have arrived by then, and they can present it and again be there to walk their colleagues through how to operate it and maintain it and all that good stuff. So all of that, the grant for the fire department, the fire safety partnership, and the allocation for the shipment of the fire truck are in process. So, and yeah. So.
Do we have a sense? I think one of the things I would like to talk about is some kind of final deadline that after which, I don't know if this makes sense, but after which the funding is just not available. So is there a sense of what makes sense in terms of that progress?
I mean, we could just say no later than May of 2022, since it shouldn't take any longer than that. If anything, I mean, it's conceivable they could go ahead of the May delegation, but it just seemed to make sense to kind of fold that in. But
well, and I don't think the Winneba, these particular expenses are the only one, or these outstanding budgets are the only one. I think aren't there others that we looked at last time?
Well, I just without knowing the details of what's outstanding, but they are from 1 or 2 years ago, possibly more. What if we were aiming to, in the future, to give people, I think, 12 to 15 months, say 15 months at the outset. So that is a kind of a March to March plus 3 months, which takes you to, maybe we did say May. Amanda, you might remember,
Yeah.
May would allow a month before June 30th, the official end of the fiscal year. So, does it make sense now to say, hey, anyone who's outstanding, you have until May 30th, and then we have to call it quits?
Yeah, I think so. I think we had looked at that, and there are 2 open grants still from the beginning of COVID, the Fire Safety Partnership and Apogeo musical exchange, that are still outstanding, totaling $6,000. That's so I think the latest, it seems like any reimbursement request should be submitted would be by June 30th, but we might want to back that up. I think, Adrian, we talked about maybe making that May 31st to have a little bit of buffer before the next fiscal year. But perhaps we'd want to recommend that those oldest grant projects, and also the ones from the previous cycle, all need to be wrapped up by May 31st. And reimbursement requests must be submitted by then, or do we push it to June 30th? I think that's a question. But then we kind of start the new fiscal year with a kind of a clean slate. And for those who haven't been able to complete their projects because it's been, the Apogeo musical exchange has been delayed several times due to the pandemic. One thought is we can, invite them to resubmit their application at the next opportunity when we relaunch a grant cycle. But I think we can't hold up or tie up the funding. We may want to reprogram some of those funds if the project's not moving forward.
Would Max be a good person, or Max, would you know of who we should consult to know if May 31st is clearly preferable to June 30th, or if it matters that much?
So as far as I know, it doesn't matter. This is kind of entirely up to you guys. If you're talking in terms of the fiscal year, of course, that's July 1 to June 30th, but this decision is totally up to you.
Well, if we say May 30th and they come back begging that they want a little more time, uh, that would give us a little wiggle room of a month. But I tend to think saying May 30th makes sense. I mean, this is from the 2019-20 fiscal year. It's 2022, you know. We could have easily ended this a while back. So yeah, and like y'all said, they have the opportunity to reapply. And I think that makes perfect sense. And I think they would agree too. So yeah, I'm supportive of the May 30th date.
I would agree.
Agree. And perhaps what we need to do, I assume that this is a recommendation we'll make to the full commission. I think that was recommended in our January meeting. And if there's agreement on that, then we'll need to probably just formally communicate with all the outstanding grant project leads about the deadline. So we probably need to develop a communication to follow up. I think most are tracking to finish by that time, to my knowledge and my understanding, but I think it's good for us to be clear about the deadline.
Oh yeah, and especially for the Winneba program, because they're actually working on that. So
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
sure they'll want to know the deadline so they can plan accordingly.
And Amanda, you're saying that following our February 15th meeting, when we present our recommendations and get agreement or some clear response, that then we need to remember to communicate with these grantees.
Correct. Mhm.
I think that makes sense. Okay,
Okay,
so there was one more topic that we wanted that Dave brought to my attention, and I thought it made sense for us to chat about here. And Dave, you want me to read your email, or do you want to present the topic? Or
I can summarize it. I had just reached out to Damon. I wasn't clear. I couldn't remember where things were in terms of approval of the guidelines and application process, et cetera, for our new travel scholarship program or opportunity. Our preparations are underway now for the May 2022 delegation from Charlottesville to Winneba. We have several people who would like to go, but would need some partial scholarship assistance. It'd be great to be able to have an application process in place before then, so they know that if they can make the trip. So Damon suggested bringing that to this committee. And I just couldn't remember where things were when we left. I know we talked about it at the full commission, and I just couldn't remember where we left it. So.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I'm just trying to jog my memory to exactly on where it certainly is part of our goals for this year. And I think we had, in terms of sequencing of the goals, we'd said we would come back to this after we got through this grant cycle as a next priority. And I think I'm also recalling, but this is where I was looking for notes, that there was some discussion about, that any scholarships would need to be funded. And I don't think we have a current line item in the budget for travel scholarships. And so does that come out of grants or, and so that would be a decision point. But when we discussed it previously with the larger commission, I think that the point was, if we want to launch a travel scholarship program, we need to fund it and, and roll that out. So that was a little bit of the late thinking. But I guess a question is, with a lower number of grant applications, would we want to repurpose some of that funding for scholarships? Might be a question we need to take up. There is some need to just finalize the grant criteria and probably run that through the commission, which I can support and bring that document back to the fore. But I think there was a question around just the funding element. does that sound consistent with other?
I
your
recall that-
recollection?
In my head, I've seen this as one of the three items that seem to be coming to the surface, and that is that we have grant funding for grants, which is one thing. We have funding for sponsorships, which is one thing, and we have funding for travel scholarships, and that they really need to be delineated. And you're right, we've been in the middle of the process with the travel scholarships, and I think that got put on hold for the moment. I don't know if, and we don't have line items in the budget, and I don't know what the procedures are to make those separate line items. In other words, asking city for funding for those three separate initiatives. For the moment, of course, we could consider some travel scholarship pulling from the grant monies that it appears we won't be using this cycle. But I think eventually isn't that our objective, to have those three things clearly spelled out with their own procedures, their own budgets, their own requirements, some looser on some issues than others because of the nature of the.
Yeah,
When do these need to be clarified for this upcoming group, for this upcoming trip?
I mean, ideally sooner rather than later, just so people can know if they make plans or not to go to Africa. But it doesn't have to happen, this week. But if we could bring it back to the full commission at our next meeting to try to finalize what the application procedure would be, and to reallocate some funding from grants to scholarships for this, at least for this fiscal year, and then try to get the application out, and maybe by March or April we can get a decision. That would be great if possible.
What we
And
Oh, sorry.
I was just thinking that in a full year of grants, we have $16,000 set aside. We're talking now about 1,500. I wonder if we can decide today on a recommendation for an amount that sounds proper or appropriate. I would not guess the whole, $16,000 minus 1,500, but maybe half of that or some of.
I think even if we just said 5,000, I'm a little hesitant to spend too much of it. If we don't get any more money from council, then we're not going to have any funding for grants next year.
Right.
But on the other hand, we don't want to get back into the habit of hoarding money, either. So if we did 4,000 or 5,000 for scholarships for this fiscal year, and then finalize the process for applying for.
Maybe we, Amanda and Damon, do you think we could go to our meeting in 2 weeks with a recommendation that 4,000 to 5,000 could be reallocated to travel scholarships if the larger commission is in agreement?
One question, just following up, Dave, what's the kind of typical scholarship amount for Winneba Travel? Is it 2,500?
So the total cost is 2,200, but we
Okay.
no longer award full scholarships. So
Right.
typically we do around $1,000 scholarships. That's
Okay.
sort of an average scholarship
Okay.
in the past when the foundation had money for scholarships.
Mhm.
Or yeah, so yeah,
Okay.
and then the participant has to come up with the rest or raise the rest.
Dave, that number 2,200, you're talking now about funding that came from the Winneba Foundation? I mean, Wait, yeah,
Sorry,
Winnebago.
the 2,200 is what it costs for a trip to Winneba through the Charlottesville Winneba Foundation. So that covers airfare, lodging, meals, ground transportation, COVID tests, visa, travel health insurance. It's pretty much all inclusive.
Not a bad deal.
It's not a bad deal. But for a lot of people, even that is still too much money. It's too much of a barrier. And so we want our trips to be as inclusive as possible, which is why we've tried to make scholarships available whenever
Mhm.
possible. So,
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we can certainly bring it up at the meeting and discuss it. And I tend to think it's something that we would want to support. We've
Mhm.
supported similar, actions in the past.
Mhm.
I mean, I think it's something that the wider group should be a part of the discussion.
Agree.
But I think I would say we're generally open to it.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it just comes down to priorities and how, how, do we want to go ahead and reprogram some of the funding for this purpose rather than hanging on to it for grants and uncertainty in the future, and how much are we comfortable repurposing? I think that's a larger commission discussion. But I can follow up to on the grant guide or the scholarship guideline document, so we can try to get that to finalization. There will need to be an application form or something that we develop to go with that, because that's really more of a guideline document, but it's not really geared toward the actual scholarship applicant. So I assume there would be an application form we'll want to develop too. So, but maybe that can follow quickly after the meeting if it's approved.
and
Yeah, the scholarship recipients would be open to maybe coming to a meeting sometime and sharing their experiences on the trip.
I think that's a wonderful idea. I mean, part of the idea with the scholarships is that people will share what they've learned when they get back, and that's come in a variety of forms. But yeah, I think that's great. That's a great idea.
I mean, it'd be nice because I love hearing from you and Nana. You've been there so many times.
Yeah,
It would be fun to hear from our citizens who benefited from our funding.
absolutely.
I think those are all the topics. Or yeah, go ahead, Amanda.
No, I was just going to summarize that it sounds like we're going to do a grant review, but then also talk about sponsorships and scholarships in our February meeting as three related. But I think I agree with Adrienne that we want to move in a direction where we sort of distinguish these as different activities of the commission, and probably clear kind of budgeting around each of those types of commission activity. Okay. And I'll commit to trying to get something for the scholarships and the sponsorships to share with the commission in advance.
Oh, that would be great.
I will add these to the agenda. So grant review, sponsorships and scholarships. Anything else that come to mind that you feel should be on the agenda? I think that will combine with the city reports and other, I think that'll probably fill up our time pretty quickly.
Yeah. The February meeting usually is all kind of grants focused in general. So.
And I don't think we necessarily have to expect that we'll come out of that meeting with, for instance, on the sponsorships. I don't think we need to expect that we'll have a fully fledged, sponsorship policy and application process and all that, but at least to get
it going.
I think we have a little time on that one.
Mm-hmm.
We do want to bring forward this one request, for the book festival, because that's timely. But in terms of a policy and a procedure, we have a little bit of time to flesh that out. But if we can at least get the full commission to bless the idea of fleshing out a policy and procedure, I think that would be a big step forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say make the priority the travel scholarships, because
Yeah.
we're actually going to have use of those, well, we anticipate anyway, and I think we should have something. Even though we're going to sponsor the book festival event, I don't think it's as crucial that we have the
Right.
policies and procedures in place as soon as we do for travel scholarships.
Yep. Yep, that sounds good. Work on that. And yeah, and I'll just try to maybe jot down a few core principles for that to get us going, but then we can follow up on that.
Okay. If you like, just for my own, get my head clear, I will send to all of you a kind of a recap of what we're determining today
Thank
and
you,
what
Adrian.
we plan to bring to the meeting on the 15th.
That's great. And Adrian, will you lead the discussion of the grant applications that we just discussed today for this cycle? Do you want to lead that part of the discussion then? Okay.
It's rather long.
It won't
I
take as
will.
long as the typical one, so.
I
hopefully.
will certainly, and yes, and I
Excellent.
may turn to Dave to speak a few moments on the Winnebago one, but yeah, happy to
Great.
do it.
Good, thank you. And Adrian, I really want to thank you for your leadership on the grants committee and taking on this grant cycle. I really have enjoyed working with you in this process and admire so much how you're thinking about all of the process improvements and the ways we can continue improving the grants program. So, and connecting it to outreach also. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Amanda. We will be tapping other people, because hopefully if we have more grants in the future, the idea really was to have every grant project have its own personal liaison person who would not necessarily be just from this subcommittee.
Yeah.
So work will be, work or connections will be farmed out as we go along.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's it then for
Well,
today.
thank you. And I guess we will be back together in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Excellent.
Sounds
Thanks.
good.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you to Lasheen and Max.
Yes, thank you to all
Thank
of
you.
you.
Have a
No
good evening.
problem. Have a great evening.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.